Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. We are diving into Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely today.
Awesome.
And it's going to be interesting because, get this, our source material is actually a YouTube video
Okay.
that is summarizing the book. So it's like a deep dive within a deep dive. And I
Right.
know you're super fascinated by how our decisions, can be swayed by all these hidden forces and how to make smarter choices when faced with all these biases.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Dan Ariely, in this book and in this video that we're going to be talking about, he really dives deep into all of that and more.
Yeah, he does a good job of not just talking about irrationality conceptually, but he sets up experiments
Right.
to really show you how it works in practice.
Yeah, so how about we jump right in? He starts out with this idea of relativity. Can you kind of unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah, so relativity is this idea that we don't really judge things on their own merits. We actually compare them to things around them.
Okay.
So to give you a really good example,
Yeah.
The Economist magazine,
Okay.
they had these subscriptions.
Yeah.
And there were three options. So it was online only, it was print only, and it was print plus online.
Okay. What was the catch?
Well, so the print only option was a decoy. So they priced it the same as the print plus online package
Okay.
to make the print plus online look like a way better deal.
Oh, so they're nudging people towards the more expensive option.
Exactly.
Pretty clever, but did it work?
It totally worked. And what was interesting is even when they removed the decoy option, people still chose the pricier package, more often,
Wow.
because that initial comparison had already skewed their perception of value.
Yeah, that's sneaky, but
Yeah.
I kind of like it. It's pretty smart.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about you, the listener. Have you ever bought a gadget or chosen a service plan where, maybe a comparison like that swayed you?
Right.
Maybe you didn't even realize it at the time. It's kind of crazy to think about how much that actually influences our choices.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another concept, which is called anchoring. So anchoring is this idea that the first price that we see becomes this reference point, even if it's totally arbitrary.
Oh, okay.
So one of the experiments that Ariely did was he had these students write down the last two digits of their social security number,
Okay.
and then they bid on items in an auction.
Wait, what their social security numbers? What do those have to do with anything?
Exactly. They're totally random.
Okay.
But the people who had higher social security numbers bid way more for the items in the auction,
That's wild.
even though those numbers had nothing to do with the actual value of the item.
So you're saying our brain just latches onto that first number we see?
It seems like it uses that as an anchor to judge everything else.
Wow.
So think about this. Have you ever wondered why luxury goods are priced so high?
I always just figured it was because they're luxury goods.
Part of it, yeah, but that initial high price tag, it also acts as an anchor
Okay.
to make everything else seem like a deal.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Another thing that really stood out to me was this concept of free.
Oh, yeah.
Ariely calls it the zero cost effect. Why are we so obsessed with free stuff?
Because it feels like we're getting something for nothing.
Yeah.
It triggers this irrational excitement in our brains.
So even if it's not the best choice, logically, we're still just drawn to it.
Totally. So in one experiment, people had the choice between a free Hershey's Kiss
Okay, chocolate. I'm already in.
or a lint truffle for a tiny price.
Oh, so a much better piece of chocolate for
Much better.
just slightly more money.
For 10 cents or something.
What did people choose?
Overwhelmingly, they chose the Kiss.
Seriously, they chose a Hershey's Kiss over a lint truffle.
For free. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Just shows how powerful that zero cost is.
Wow.
We just get so caught up in that idea of getting something for nothing that we overlook the actual value.
So what's the takeaway for our listener? How do we not fall for this free trap?
Be mindful.
Yeah.
So whenever you see something's offered for free,
Take a step back and be is this really the best choice for me? Or am I being blinded by the free,
Yeah.
think about those free trials, buy one, get one free deals.
Right.
Are you actually getting value, or is that free element really distorting your perception?
Right, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. Ariely also talks about social norms versus market norms.
Yes.
Can you explain the difference?
Yeah, so social norms are these unwritten rules that govern our interactions with friends and family.
Okay.
It's about favors, reciprocity, that sense of obligation.
Okay.
Whereas market norms are very transactional.
Okay.
So you provide a service, you get paid.
Gotcha. So social norms are Helping a friend move and market norms are like hiring movers. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the problem is when these two norms clash,
Yeah.
especially in the workplace.
Oh, I can see that. Like when companies try to create like this family atmosphere, but then also still operate on like these very strict market norms.
Mm.
Exactly. And then you get resentment from employees who feel like they're being asked to go above and beyond without proper compensation.
Yeah, you can't really have it both ways, can you?
You can't, so like either treat your employees like family and show that genuine appreciation,
Yeah.
or stick to clear market norms and pay them fairly for their extra effort.
Yeah.
So like for you, the listener, it's important to recognize like which norms are at play
All right.
and act accordingly.
Okay, cool. So we've covered relativity, anchoring, the power of free, and the clash between social and market norms. What other fascinating insights about our irrationality does Ariely reveal?
Well, he talks about what happens when our brains go on vacation,
Ooh.
so to speak, like when arousal takes over.
This is where he talks about those experiments with like sexual behavior, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So his research shows that heightened emotional states, especially arousal,
Okay.
completely change how we think and act.
Okay. And I guess the key takeaway here is that we're terrible at predicting how we'll act when our emotions are high.
Exactly. We think we're in control, but when emotions kick in,
Right.
all bets are off.
Like our rational selves just check out completely.
Yeah.
So what's the solution? How do we prepare for those moments when our brains decide to take a vacation?
Well, it's crucial to plan for those moments, especially when it comes to like important decisions.
Okay.
Like think about setting boundaries,
Okay.
pre-committing to certain actions, or even like having a trusted friend who can hold you accountable.
It's like having a backup plan for your brain.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like you have a strategy in place for when like your rational mind checks out.
I like it.
And speaking of checking out,
Okay.
let's talk about something I'm sure you're familiar with. Procrastination.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I'm sure everyone listening
Yeah.
has experienced this at some point.
I'm the queen of procrastination.
Why are we so bad at doing things that we know we should do?
I know. It's so true.
Well, Ariely explains it as this thing called time inconsistency. So like we want the good stuff now, even if it leads to pain later.
Right.
We prioritize instant gratification over long-term benefits.
Yeah. It's like that classic battle between present self and future self.
Exactly.
And present self wins a lot.
Present self usually wins, yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you remember that experiment that Ariely did
Yeah.
with student papers?
I do, actually.
He divided the students into 3 groups.
Okay.
There was one with no deadlines, one where they chose their own deadlines,
Oh, that's nice.
and one with externally imposed deadlines.
Wait, they gotta choose their own deadlines. That's like a dream come true.
Yeah, you think that would be like the best?
Yeah?
But actually those students did the worst.
Really?
The ones with the externally set deadlines performed the best.
That's so interesting.
They even outperformed the ones who chose their own deadlines.
Wow. So even when we have like the freedom to set our own deadlines, we
Yeah.
don't always make the best choice for ourselves.
It turns out we're not very good at like
Right.
setting deadlines that actually motivate us.
Yeah.
So what can we do about it?
Yeah.
Well, Ariely suggests using what's called commitment devices.
Okay, commitment devices. What are those?
They're basically ways to trick ourselves into doing the right thing.
Oh,
So think like automatic savings plans,
okay.
you know, scheduling those dentist appointments in advance,
Yeah.
or even finding an accountability partner
Right.
who will like help you stick to your goals.
So we're kind of taking the decision-making power out of our own hands and giving it to like something or someone else.
In a way, yes, we're acknowledging that like our future selves will thank us,
Right.
even if our present selves are not thrilled about it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I need to get some more commitment devices in my life.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Okay, let's move on to another concept that I found really interesting, the feeling of ownership.
Ah, yes, the endowment effect.
Yes.
So, Ariely's research shows that we tend to overvalue things simply because we own them.
I've definitely experienced that, like when you're trying to sell something that you own and you think it's worth way more
Way more.
than like anyone is willing to pay for it.
Yeah, it's because like ownership creates this emotional attachment,
Right.
and that inflates our perception of value.
Yeah.
So like one of the examples he gives is with these Duke basketball tickets.
Okay.
So the people who owned tickets wanted way more money for them
Wow.
than the people who didn't own tickets were willing to pay.
So how do we avoid this trap? Because it's got to be tough to like emotionally detach when you're like buying or selling something you care about.
It is, but I think awareness is key.
Okay.
So when you're buying or selling, just remind yourself that, like, your emotional attachment might be clouding your judgment.
Right.
Try to step back and focus on, like, the objective market value.
Easier said than done.
For sure.
A good advice nonetheless. Okay. Ready to tackle another like irrational quirk?
Hit me.
Okay, let's talk about FOMO, fear of missing out.
Oh, it's powerful.
Right.
Makes us cling to options even when it's not in our best interest.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. It's like we're so afraid of like closing a door
Yeah.
on an opportunity that we end up like spreading ourselves too thin
Right.
and then missing out on the things that really matter.
Exactly. Think about all those projects you started but never finished.
Ouch.
Or those relationships that you dragged on even though they weren't working.
Too real.
So think about it, listener.
Yeah,
How much time and energy have you wasted
right.
chasing possibilities that didn't pan out just because you didn't want to close the door?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I need to think about that one.
Yeah.
Okay, on to another topic that I found fascinating, the power of expectations.
So Ariely argues that what we expect to experience can actually, like, dramatically influence what we actually experience.
Oh, wow.
He did this fascinating experiment with expensive wine.
Was actually expensive wine?
Not really.
Okay.
So they gave people the exact same wine, but they told some people it was this pricey vintage,
Oh.
and then they told other people it was just like a cheap bottle.
Right.
And guess what? The people who thought they were drinking expensive wine
I'm going to guess they enjoyed it more.
enjoyed it more.
No way. So you're saying our brains can be tricked into thinking something is better than it actually is just because of our expectations?
Totally. Like our brains are constantly constructing our reality
Wow.
based in part on our expectations.
That's kind of scary, but also kind of awesome.
It is.
So how do we combat that? Because it's hard to just like switch off your expectations.
It is, but by being aware of it,
Okay.
we could at least try to, like, approach new experiences with more of an open mind.
Right.
So, listener, next time you try something new, like, consciously try to set aside those expectations.
That's right.
And just judge it based on its own merits. You might be surprised.
Yeah, that's a challenge I'm willing to take on.
Yeah.
Speaking of surprises, let's talk about how price can trick our brains.
Yes, we often equate price with quality, even when there's no real difference.
Right.
Our perception of value can be very easily manipulated.
Yeah, like with that study with the painkillers, where people took like the expensive placebo and felt better just because they thought it was going to work better.
Exactly. The power of suggestion is real,
Right.
and it works in all sorts of ways. Think about, like, brand name products versus generic brands.
Yeah.
Are you really paying for higher quality, or are you just paying for the, like, perception of prestige?
Yeah, it makes you wonder how much of our spending is driven by actual value versus just perceived value.
Totally.
Okay, let's wrap up this section with a topic that's a little uncomfortable but important: dishonesty.
Oh, yeah.
So Ariely's research shows that we are all susceptible to dishonesty,
Yeah.
even in small ways.
Even in small ways.
It's not just about bad apples. It's about like the situations we're in
Exactly.
and the rationalizations we make.
The rationalizations. Yeah.
And like in that experiment where people had the chance to cheat on a test
Yeah.
and they were more likely to cheat when the rewards were like non-monetary like tokens instead of cash.
Like, we can justify small dishonesty more easily
Right.
when it doesn't involve money directly.
Yeah, it's all about those like little rationalizations that we're making in our minds.
Exactly. But even those small acts can
Yeah,
add up and potentially lead us down a slippery slope.
that's a good point. So what can we do to combat this tendency towards dishonesty in ourselves and like in others? I mean, we can't exactly like monitor everybody's moves.
True. But Ariely suggests that environments that promote transparency and accountability can help,
Okay.
like reduce the temptation to cheat.
So if we know we're being watched, we're less likely to stray from the path of righteousness.
Exactly. And sometimes all it takes is, like, a gentle reminder
Yeah.
of our moral compass.
Like with those honor code experiments,
Yes.
where just signing an honor code before a test like significantly reduced cheating.
Exactly. It's simple but effective.
Yeah.
Like just a little nudge in the right direction.
It's amazing how those little interventions can have such a big impact on our behavior.
It is.
So what other insights does Ariely offer about how to nudge people towards, more ethical choices?
Well, he says that even simple reminders of ethical standards can make a really big difference.
Oh, interesting.
It's like we all have this, like, internal compass, right?
Right.
And sometimes it just needs, like, a little recalibration.
It's like we need to be snapped out of our irrationality to like help us make choices that are more aligned with our values.
Exactly. And that brings us to like the big takeaway from Predictably Irrational.
Okay.
Ariely's core message is that human irrationality is predictable.
So we're not just like randomly making bad decisions. There are actual patterns
There are.
to our irrationality.
There are. And once we understand those patterns,
Okay.
we can actually use that knowledge to make better decisions,
Okay.
both for ourselves and like society as a whole.
That's pretty empowering.
It is.
It's like we're finally getting a glimpse behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the strings that are, controlling our puppet-like decision-making.
Exactly. And with that knowledge comes power.
Yeah.
So we can design systems that account for our biases, nudge people towards better choices, and ultimately create a more rational and just world.
Oh, wow. That's a lot to take in. We've covered so much ground today. Relativity, anchoring, the power of free, social versus market norms, arousal, procrastination, the endowment effect, FOMO, the power of expectations, the influence of price, and even dishonesty.
Yeah, we got through a lot.
It's incredible how much our decisions are influenced by these irrational forces.
It really is.
Yeah.
But like we've discussed, like understanding these forces
Right.
is the first step to like making better choices.
I'm curious, what was the one concept from Predictably Irrational that like really stood out to you?
I think for me, it was the power of expectations.
Yeah.
Like that what we believe can actually shape our reality.
Yeah.
That's just mind-boggling to me.
I agree. It makes you realize how much power our minds have over our experiences.
For sure.
So for you listening,
Yeah.
what was your biggest takeaway? What resonated with you the most?
And more importantly,
Yeah.
how can you apply these insights to your own life?
Right.
Like, how might you change your approach to decision-making now knowing what you know?
Those are great questions to ponder. I know I'm going to be much more aware of those anchors and decoys
Yeah.
and free offers lurking everywhere. And I'm definitely going to work on setting up some commitment devices
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
combat my procrastination.
It's been a pleasure diving deep into Predictably Irrational with you.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of behavioral economics. Everyone, until next time, stay curious.